The torches hissed as if they were breathing. Their smoke curled into the ribbed stone ceiling, painting the vaulted chamber the color of old honey. Barrels lined the walls like silent witnesses. Chains hung but did not clink, and in the center stood a post smooth from years of frightened hands. They brought Alara in barefoot. She was 19. The miller's daughter, quick-witted and stubborn, in a way that made elders purse their lips. Her dress, blue from her mother's dyeing pot, was dusty to the hem. She held her chin up, but her eyes kept finding the ring of townsfolk who had been summoned as witnesses. The midwife with folded arms, the scribe with his quill poised, 2 guards who watched her without malice, and the prior who believed mercy should leave no scars. "By order of the council," he intoned, "you will undergo the test of levity." His voice carried strangely in the chamber, as if the stones themselves disliked its duty. "If your heart is clean of malice, if you spoke in anger but not in deceit, then you will endure and be restored. If not," he let the sentence trail into torch smoke. Alara's breath thinned. She had shouted at the steward that morning, shouted what the whole village whispered, that grain went missing, and bells rang for feast days while children learned to not hunger in their belts. She hadn't lied. But truth in public, spoken by a young woman, was labeled insolence. And insolence had been waiting a long time for a reason to be punished. The matron who would conduct the test stepped forward. Sister Mael, a small, stern woman, whose eyes, to Alara's surprise, were kind. A linen bundle rested in her hands like a swaddled child. "Look at me," Sister Mael said quietly. Alara did. "Will you beat me?" "No," Mael said. "The test leaves no marks." The linen unfurled. White feathers lay inside. Ostrich plumes, swan's down quills, a long, fine plume, the color of cream. Some were weighted with beads, others trimmed to a surgical neatness. The townsfolk murmured, and Alara felt a wave of heat ebb through the room, not from the torches but from their curiosity. They bound Alara's wrists high on the post, with soft leather so circulation would not fail. She could flex her fingers. She could move a little. She could not run. Sister Mael tested the knots, and nodded once. "Before we begin," the prior said, "speak if your conscience compels you." Alara swallowed. Her mother stood near the doorway, hands twisted in her apron, fear bright in her gaze. The easy choice would be to recant, to bargain, to call her own words childish. Instead, Alara lifted her voice. "I will not say I lied," she said. "But if I spoke with fury and wounded honor with my tongue, I ask to be taught a wiser one." She glanced at her mother and managed a small, brave smile. "I ask to be restored, not broken." The prior studied her a long moment, as though weighing stone and water. "Let it be written," he said to the scribe. Sister Mael took up the longest plume. "Breathe," she advised, standing at Alara's side. "The body thinks laughter is surrender. Do not let it confuse you." "I don't laugh easily," Alara said. "You will," said the matron, and her mouth twitched with a weary humor. "Everyone does in here." The first touch landed like a ghost upon Alara's forearm, just above the pulse. It was nothing. A whisper, a flutter. Then the plume glided to the tender hollow beneath the arm, tracing a path of nervous sparks across skin that had never been asked to bear such attention. Alara winced. Her ribs expanded on a startled breath. The crowd leaned in, appetite and pity at the same table. Feathers are soft when you hold them. On flesh made helpless, they are thieves. They steal control. The plume traveled under her arm, slipped to her side, circled the seam where bone made cliff and skin made shore. Alara's jaw clenched. She pushed her head back against the post. She forced stillness over the first ripples of laughter. "You see," the scribe murmured to no one, "she is proud." Sister Mael changed feathers. A trimmed swan's down quill. Finer. Crueler. It probed the shallow cup beside Ilara's collarbone, sketched a patient pattern along the lower curve of her ribs. Ilara's lips parted. A sound escaped, half breath, half startled note, as if a bird took wing inside her. "Name what you feel," the prior said, his method old as his office. "Speak it. To name a thing is to rule it." "Eat," Ilara gasped. And the plume's tip grazed her waist. Her knees tried to bend, though the bindings held her upright. And laughter, like a storm, behind a door. Sister Mael's voice remained practical, almost domestic. "When your mind says stop, listen for what the deeper place says. The deeper place is rarely wrong." Ilara bit the inside of her cheek. The feather dipped lower, found the soft place at her hip, where fabric did not guard well. A helpless bubble of laughter burst out, short and bright and immediately stifled. Then another. And another, until they came like hiccups, and she shook her head, furious at herself, tears starting. Not of sorrow, but of a ridiculous, maddening mirth she did not invite. The room changed with the sound. People smiled unwillingly. Even the guard's posture softened. Laughter is contagious, even when it is born in a chamber meant for shame. Sister Mael altered rhythm, a tactician who knew her battlefield. The feather swirled slowly, then flickered fast. It mapped Ilara's flank with tiny circles, then dragged a single straight line that felt like lightning's quiet cousin. Ilara writhed within the few inches the straps allowed. She laughed, really laughed now, wild and breathless, then choked on the heat of it and shook her head so hard her red hair whipped her cheeks. "Say the words you swallowed this morning," the prior prompted gently, over the music of her laughter. "But say them without poison." She strained against the post, panting between helpless bursts. I said the steward feasts while children starve," she managed, a hiccup threading her syllables. "I said the measure cheats. I said." The feather returned to the pocket beneath her arm and she convulsed. "I said, oh mercy. I said we deserve better. Do you still believe it?" "Yes," she gasped, a bright impossible grin cutting across her face through tears. "Yes. But I wish I had spoken without hate." The prior's eyes softened. "Then say it again now. Clean." Sister Mael slowed the feather, not cruel but insistent, keeping the storm alive while guiding Ilara toward the center of it. Ilara closed her eyes. Amid the intolerable softness she found a still point. The deeper place Mael had named. Her laughter didn't stop. It simply ceased to own her. She inhaled. "We deserve measure that is honest," she said, voice shaking yet clear. "We deserve guardians who do not take more than their share. And I deserve a tongue that doesn't scorch what it means to heal." The matron lifted the feather away and waited. Silence swelled, full, living, strange. In it, the crowd heard their own thoughts return like echoes. The scribe's quill hovered over parchment. The guards shifted, as if a weight they carried daily had been nudged to a new shoulder. Then, from the back, someone scoffed. The steward himself had come, face pinched, cloak heavy with braided trim. "Theatrics," he said. "She dances for your pity. Bind her feet and see how honest she is then." A ripple of unease passed through the onlookers. Sister Mael's mouth thinned. The prior lifted a hand, commanding stillness. "The test is not cruelty for sport," he said. "It is a mirror. If you do not dare look into it, steward, you may close your eyes. We will keep ours open." Ilara's chest still rose and fell too fast. Her bound hands flexed. A slow opening of fingers, like the petals of a flower she'd once seen in a trader's cart. She met the steward's gaze, and something unexpected stirred inside her. Not triumph, Not defiance, but a raw, clean steadiness. "Again," she whispered to Sister Male. "I can bear it." The matron studied her, then nodded once and chose a new plume. Shorter, edged, almost surgical. She stepped behind Ilara now, where ribs meet spine and laughter turns sharp as lightning. The crowd held its breath. The torches crackled. Beyond the chamber door, a bell told the hour. The feather descended. The first feather's stroke had ended, but its echo still trembled inside Ilara's ribs. Her breath came ragged, laughter still clinging to her throat like smoke that refused to clear. She leaned against the post, eyes glimmering through tears, and realized that her voice, once sharp and defiant, now felt strangely clean. Yet, the test was not over. The torches along the wall guttered as Sister Male dipped the shorter, edged plume into a small bowl of oil that glinted gold in the dim light. The scent was strange, part myrrh, part rose, and something sharper beneath. "This is for truth unspoken," she murmured. "The places where laughter hides pain." The prior nodded gravely. The onlookers, drawn by morbid awe, pressed closer. Even the steward, cloak heavy with disdain, watched with the curiosity of a man who wanted to see the proud brought low. When the plume touched her again, Ilara gasped, as if struck by lightning made of silk. It slid behind her shoulder, brushed the narrow column of her spine, then swept to her lower ribs in a slow circle. Every nerve seemed to wake, screaming and laughing at once. Ilara's body twisted, her laughter wild and uncontrollable now. It poured out of her like a river breaking its dam. "Stop, please," she tried to say between gasps, but Sister Mala only whispered calmly. "Breathe. The truth lives under laughter. Don't chase it away." The matron's movements were practiced and deliberate. She changed tempo constantly. Slow drags, then rapid flicks, then long glides that forced Ilara to arch and cry out, her voice a trembling note of laughter and pain. The witnesses were caught between horror and fascination. One woman pressed her hands to her mouth. A guard muttered a prayer. The steward sneered, but even he could not look away. In the middle of the storm, something within Ilara began to change. Her laughter still rang, but underneath it, she felt her anger begin to melt. Not disappear, but turn clear, like ice thawing into water. Her mind replayed the morning. Her words, her fury, the children she had defended. She realized she had shouted because she was afraid no one would hear her otherwise. "I didn't want to shame them," she gasped through her laughter. "I wanted them to listen." Sister Male's voice came gentle but firm. "Then let the truth laugh its way free." The feather glided again, down her flank, tracing each trembling muscle. Her laughter now sounded different, less desperate, more alive, as if each breath was clearing away old pain. Tears streamed down her face, but her smile, wild, radiant, human, was unmistakable. Suddenly, Mael stepped closer and whispered near her ear, "The body tires before the soul confesses." She reached for a smaller plume, black as midnight, its edge sharpened with wax. When that feather touched her navel, and then the soft skin of her stomach, Ilara shrieked, laughter turning almost to sobs. Her knees buckled, bound wrists straining above her head. She twisted, head back, hair whipping across her shoulders. The spectators could hardly breathe. The prior's lips moved silently in prayer. Sister Mael didn't stop. She moved the plume with rhythmic precision, tracing spirals, crossing lines, forcing Ilara to face the storm fully. And in that chaos, between tears and laughter, something broke, not in pain, but in release. Her body stilled, her breathing slowed, and she whispered, voice raw, "I forgive them. All of them." The words silenced the chamber. Sister Mael lowered the feather and placed a hand on Alara's trembling shoulder. "You've spoken the truth," she said softly. "And you have done what few can do. Forgive those who wronged you." The prior stepped forward, his face wet with reflection of torchlight. "The test is fulfilled," he declared. "The punishment leaves no scars, but it leaves no lies either." The crowd, uncertain how to react, began to disperse in hushed awe. The steward turned on his heel, his authority dimmed. Only Alara's mother rushed forward, taking her daughter's face in trembling hands. Alara's laughter had faded into quiet tears, not of shame, but of peace. "Mother," she whispered, "it didn't hurt. It burned, but it didn't hurt." Her mother kissed her forehead. "Then maybe it worked," she said. As the chamber emptied, Sister Mael looked once more at the feathers lying on the table. Soft, silent instruments of strange redemption. She murmured a prayer that no one heard. "May those who test learn mercy, and those who suffer find light." Alara stood on unsteady legs, the leather bindings removed, torchlight dancing over her damp hair. For the first time, she bowed her head not in submission, but in peace. Outside, thunder rolled through the mountains, a storm mirroring the laughter that had shaken the chamber. But inside her, the storm had passed. The storm had ended. What lingered now was silence, deep, vast, and heavy with meaning. Alara sat on the edge of the wooden bench in the chamber, where the torches had burned low. Their light now was softer, gentler, gliding along the wet stone like a memory. The air smelled faintly of oil and smoke. Her wrists bore no bruises, only a pale warmth where the leather straps had held her. For the first time since morning, no one was watching her. No crowd, no scribe, no judgment. Only Sister Mael, who knelt by a small basin of water, washing the feathers one by one as if cleansing them of the cries they had drawn. Alara's laughter still echoed faintly in her mind, not the wild, uncontrollable bursts from the trial, but a soft echo, like wind through wheat. It no longer embarrassed her. It felt clean. "You breathe differently now," Sister Mael said without looking up. Her hands moved slowly through the water. "That's how you know it's done." Alara rubbed her arms, eyes downcast. "It feels strange, like I lost something I didn't know I was carrying." "You did," Mael replied. "Anger wears a mask of strength, but it's heavier than truth." Alara looked toward the table where the feathers rested. "And you do this every day? For people who have sinned? For people who have spoken?" Maye corrected quietly. "Some lie. Some tell the truth too early. Some too loud. The punishment is only a bridge. What matters is who reaches the other side." Alara nodded slowly. "Then maybe I've crossed it." By evening, word had already spread through the town. The steward's servants whispered of how the miller's daughter had laughed through the trial. The market women said her laughter had driven the evil spirits out of the hall. The guards, half embarrassed, told how even the prior's lips had twitched, as if to smile. Children dared each other to find a feather, dip it in oil, and pretend to summon the spirit of truth. And somewhere, behind closed doors, the steward himself paced, furious that laughter had undone what cruelty could not. When the chamber emptied completely, the prior entered quietly. The man's robes smelled faintly of incense and rain. He studied Alara, smaller now, wrapped in her mother's shawl, yet somehow brighter. "You have made the council uneasy," he said finally. "No one laughs through judgment. It unsettles those who build power on silence." "I didn't mean to mock," Alara said softly. "It just happened." "I know." He smiled faintly. "That is why it frightened them. You reminded us that truth need not scream to be heard. Sometimes it laughs." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Take care, Lara. They will call this mercy, but mercy always costs something. I already paid, she said. And I'm still here. The prior nodded slowly. Then go home. And when they ask what the feathers taught you, I'll tell them, she interrupted gently. That silence speaks louder than fear. The next morning, the sun rose pale but warm over the village. Dew glittered on the thatched roofs like tiny shards of glass. Alara walked barefoot through the lane, each step soft against the dirt road. Her mother waited outside the mill, a loaf of bread in her hands, eyes shining with quiet pride. You're free, she whispered. Alara smiled. No, she said, looking at the distant church tower. I'm different. Her laughter, faint, calm, and full of life, drifted with the morning breeze. And though no one else was in the lane, it felt as if the whole village heard it. The sun was high, yet the village square felt cold. Where once there had been torches and laughter, now there was silence and suspicion. Alara walked across the cobblestones with a loaf of bread in her hands, but eyes followed her every step. Some bowed slightly, whispering blessings. Others turned away, muttering that no girl should leave a trial unchanged. The test had ended, but its shadow had only begun. By dusk, stories twisted faster than the wind. Some claimed Alara had bewitched the feathers, that her laughter had been a spell. Others swore the steward had tried to stop her release, only to be silenced by the prior himself. Alara tried to ignore them, but each whisper felt like a thread tightening around her throat. Even her friends kept their distance. At the well, two women stopped talking as she approached. At the bakery, coins were taken from her hand without a word. Her mother said, "They fear what they don't understand." Alara nodded, though her heart sank. They fear that I didn't break. That night, the steward met with two guards in the candlelit hall. His face was hard, his voice dripping with poison. She made fools of us, he hissed. The council looks weak. If laughter can wash away guilt, then every liar will ask for feathers instead of chains. One guard hesitated. The prior declared her absolved. Then we find another reason. The steward snapped. Blasphemy. Witchcraft. Her laughter, he smirked. It echoed too long, didn't it? They nodded. Fear could be reshaped into obedience easily enough. Sister Mael returned to Alara's cottage that evening. She carried no feathers this time, only a small lantern. They are speaking of you, Maele said quietly. And not kindly. I know, Alara replied, gazing into the fire. But if truth can be mocked, then it's still truth. It will survive. Maela sat beside her. You are brave, but do not mistake courage for safety. The steward seeks to undo what you proved. Alara looked up. Then he fears me. He fears what you became, Mael said. A voice that cannot be silent. The nun placed a single white feather on the table, the same one that had touched Alara's skin. Keep it. A reminder. Laughter can be weapon and prayer both. The next morning, Alara went to the square again. This time, she didn't hide. She stood by the well, bread in her basket, eyes steady as people passed. The butcher looked away, but the baker's wife hesitated, then gave a shy nod. Moments later, a child ran up, eyes bright. Miss Alara, is it true you laughed at the steward? Alara smiled faintly. No, she said. I laughed at fear. The words carried, soft but sharp, landing in the ears of everyone nearby. A hush fell over the square. For the first time since her trial, no one looked at her with pity or doubt, just wonder. That evening, as the sun sank beyond the hills, Alara stood on the edge of the fields, the white feather in her hand. It glowed faintly in the last light, fragile yet unbroken. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Sister Mael's calm stride. They'll come for you again, Mael said softly. You know that. "I do," Alara whispered. "But this time, I won't face them alone." Across the village, laughter rose from a few homes, cautious, uncertain but real. It spread like sparks through dry grass, small at first, then growing. Sister Mael smiled faintly. "The feather's shadow fades." Alara nodded. "Then it's time for the truth to stand in sunlight." The council hall was full again. Where laughter once echoed, now there was the tense hum of fear and curiosity. Candles flickered along the stone walls, their flames bending as if the air itself hesitated. Alara stood in the center of the chamber. No ropes this time, no bindings. Just the same blue dress she had worn on the day of her trial. The white feather rested in her hands like a fragile blade of light. Sister Mael and the prior stood nearby. The steward sat at the high table, jaw tight, his voice ready to strike. "She mocks the sacred order," the steward began. "She turns penance into spectacle. She defied the council's purpose and turned laughter into rebellion." His words rolled across the chamber like stones. The prior's eyes were steady. "You fear what she revealed," he said quietly. "That mercy is stronger than shame." The steward rose. "Mercy breeds disobedience. The crowd now questions judgment itself. That is her crime. She unbound fear." Alara lifted her head. "Fear was never sacred," she said softly. A murmur spread through the witnesses. Farmers, mothers, guards, the same faces who had once watched her tied to the post. Some looked guilty, others hopeful. The prior motioned for silence. "Alara, you stand accused again, of sowing unrest. Speak what truth you hold." Alara looked at the feather in her hands. "When they tested me," she said, "I laughed because I could not lie. That laughter was not rebellion, it was truth. Too soft for chains, too strong for silence." She stepped forward, voice gaining strength. "You told us justice leaves no scars. But fear leaves thousands, all unseen. If truth is punished, then punishment is the lie." The hall fell still. The steward's lips curled. "You would undo centuries of law for the sound of your own voice." "No," she said, "for the right to use it." The prior approached slowly, his old eyes bright with something fierce and new. He took the feather from her hand and held it up to the light. "This," he said, "was meant to humiliate. But in her hands it became a mirror. Let it be known. No council, no man, no ritual has the right to silence what is true." The steward slammed his fist on the table. "Blasphemy!" But the crowd was already stirring. People rising, whispering, nodding. The murmur turned to words, words to voices. "Let her speak. She told the truth. She laughed because she was free." The noise swelled like a tide breaking its wall. The steward's face turned pale. "You will lose control of them," he hissed at the prior. "Perhaps control was the wrong dream," the old man said softly. Sister Mael stepped forward and placed her hand on Alara's shoulder. "Every age needs its fool. The one who laughs first, so others remember they can." Alara turned to the people, her people, and lifted the feather high. Torchlight caught its edge, scattering gold across the chamber. "No more silence," she said. "Not from me, not from any of us." The crowd answered, not with shouts, but with quiet rising laughter. It started soft, then spread from person to person, until the entire hall trembled with it. A living echo of that day's trial. The steward fled before it reached him. Weeks later, the chamber stood empty, its torches cold. The feathers were gone. Burned at dawn, their ashes scattered across the river. Alara now taught children near the mill. They laughed easily, without fear. The prior often watched from afar, his hands folded behind his back, smiling faintly. And on her table, in a glass jar, lay one single feather, untouched by flame, white, unburned, and free of dust. When light touched it, it shimmered like the first note of laughter after a long silence. And remember, the stories we tell, and the ones we listen to, shape who we are. So take the lesson, carry it with you, and keep growing. Because even in the darkest moments, there's always something to learn, and a better version of ourselves waiting on the other side. If this story touched you, leave a like, drop a comment, and share it with someone who needs it. Let's spread these messages, one heart at a time. See you in the next story.